Baker Mayfield, an injury in week 2 that he's responsible for because he decided to go make a tackle after throwing an interception. The left shoulder was messed up the entirety of the year. He played as long as he could. He's going to have surgery. Mary Kay Cabot has done some great reporting on Baker Mayfield, and she had something recently that suggested that if there aren't changes made to the offensive philosophy and if the relationship doesn't improve between Baker Mayfield and Coach Kevin Stefanski, Mayfield may want traded. Now, a couple of weeks ago, she had a much more thorough and revealing report, I think, as to all the things happening behind the scenes that have left Baker Mayfield irritated. A variety of things. It was very well done. There were 6 or 7 different things because he's the one that came out and said, it's not just external noise, it's internal stuff that's been a problem this year. So he's been making it clear there are issues. Well, he didn't like what Mary Kay had to report most recently. He called it clickbait, had a very aggressive tweet coming after her personally for doing her job. I don't know that that's a good idea for a guy that plans to be in Cleveland because she's been covering that team longer than he's been alive, I think. Look, Peter, it's clear that there's dysfunction in Cleveland. Shocker. There's been dysfunction with that team even when they were a playoff team last year. But they got a decision to make. And I think this is funny that he would fight the argument that he may ask to be traded. That glosses over the fact that they may decide they want to trade him.
Mike, I always think when somebody, let's take Mary Kay Cabot, for instance. Mary Kay Cabot has covered the Browns for, I'm just going to guess, 25 or 30 years. She spent much of her adult life covering the Cleveland Browns. She's not either getting fired tomorrow because she's not getting clicks on her stories, nor is she getting a raise tomorrow because she got 3,000 more clicks on this story than something else. It's the weirdest, dumbest thing that teams and players and sometimes coaches say about people in the media. Okay? You know, the Cleveland Plain Dealer is one of the most established newspapers in the country. And although newspapers are dying, Cleveland.com, which is the foundation of that, and the internet presence of that, the digital presence, they're not going anywhere. And they'll be alive for a long time. So it's ridiculous to say that Mary Kay Cabot is motivated by trying to get more people coming to the website to read her stories. It's just silly. Having said that, look, I don't know what the real story is. I do know that one of the most stunning things this year is that the Cleveland Browns did not make the playoffs and looked ugly a lot of time not making the playoffs. And it isn't just Baker Mayfield, although, you know, he did his best to keep the Browns out of the playoffs by the way he played down the stretch. But I will also say this, Mike. Kevin Stefanski, by the way he coached, and his play calling in Green Bay by not calling runs with a running down the stretch with a running game that had averaged 8.3 yards per carry to the point where, you know, they have a chance to get in position to win that game and to really boost their playoff chances. I simply, you know, there's not one person to blame here. And so I think that they've got to straighten out that relationship, obviously. But I also think that just one person, Baker Mayfield, is not the only person to blame here.
Oh, I agree with you, but the reality is the Browns need to take a step back given where they are in the relationship with Baker Mayfield and ask themselves the very difficult but pertinent question, do we continue this relationship and how do we continue? Do we do 1 year and see what happens after the fifth-year option expires? Do we extend his contract on a second-tier value that isn't anywhere close to the top of the market? Or do we just move on now? Do we find somebody to take on $18.8 million and take Baker Mayfield, and we find somebody else? A lot of it depends upon who else they can get.
Mike, I would just make this point about everybody who said, okay, and I've heard it. A lot of people, a lot of fans in Cleveland want to be done with it and everything, which is the emotional part of your brain speaking. And I'll tell you why, in my opinion, unless Baker Mayfield does one of these things and said, no, I am not coming back. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. I would absolutely unequivocally not get rid of him right now. His value is at its nadir, and $18.8 million for a quarterback who gives you a chance in 2022 is better, in my opinion, than sitting there with the whatever pick they're going to have, 13, 14, I don't know. But taking a quarterback who you have no idea whether that quarterback is even going to make it. At his best, you've seen that Baker Mayfield can be and should be a long-term quarterback for your team. But he wasn't at his best almost all season. There's no way I'd sign him to an extension for a lot of money. There is a way that I would meet him in March after everything is settled down and say, listen, we would really like to have a total win-win scenario for 2022. You come back at $18.8 million, and if you play great, one of two things can happen. You'll be able to go out and seek your fortune somewhere, or you'll sign here for $40 million a year. So to me, that is what I would do if I were the Browns.
Unless they could get Russell Wilson to tie the two stories together. That would be intriguing.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.